supplementary. The member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. It appears that senior ministry officials are of the opinion that her Minister of Government and Consumer Services is acting in a conflict of interest. An email from the Assistant Deputy Minister read, "We all know it has been, until very recently, a long-standing government practice and policy to appoint people from outside the regulated professions to boards." The Assistant Deputy Minister added, and I quote, "I believe the Minister of Government and Consumer Services needs to give the best advice on why this practice is not optimal." Mr. Speaker, is the reason why it's not optimal because it appears the minister is breaching practice and ignoring consumer interests by appointing individuals with ties to him and the Liberal Party?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that I've answered this question a couple of times now. There is a process in place, Mr. Speaker, that assesses the merits of people who come forward for potential appointments. The fact that civil service will from time to time lay out a process, remind us what a process is, Mr. Speaker, make it clear what the process is. From my perspective, that's the job of the civil service, Mr. Speaker. The job of the civil service is to give us advice and for us to act on that advice. But we set up the processes. We set up the arm's-length process, Mr. Speaker. Look across government. You will see appointments from all political stripes, Mr. Speaker, and no political stripes, because there is an arm's-length, depoliticized process.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Back to the Premier. Of the 5 new appointments made by her minister during his mandate, 4 were against public service advice. Out of those 4, 3 of them are his constituents, and the fourth happens to be a former Liberal candidate. Now the minister is at it again, about to override extensive advice, break with the practice of appointing consumer advocates to public boards, and pass on 4 qualified candidates in an attempt to appoint another constituent of his. Mr. Speaker, this is simply not acceptable.
Order.
Why is the Premier allowing his or her ministers to create a culture of unacceptable public appointment patronage?
No, Mr. Speaker, the public appointments process is open, it's accessible, it's transparent. All applicants apply through the Public Appointments Secretariat, Mr. Speaker. That is the practice, and that is what everyone has to do, Mr. Speaker. They can apply online, they can get information about the process, they can see upcoming vacancies, Mr. Speaker. And I would just say that this level of transparency has been introduced as a result of changes that we have made, Mr. Speaker, because we believe that the practices that have gone on in the past, where patronage was the rule, that is not what we support, Mr. Speaker. We support a merit-based process, and that's why there are people from all across the political spectrum who have been appointed to agencies, commissions, and boards as part of this government's tenure, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Final supplementary.
Back to the Premier. It is clear from the memo the senior staff is so concerned about the minister's conflict of interest that they've laid it out in writing. That is why today I filed a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner. Until this government's recent slew of scandals, precedent dictated that ministers would step aside while under investigation. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier ask the minister to temporarily step it?
Stop the clock. Order. Start the clock. Please finish.
Mr. Speaker, will the Premier ask the minister to temporarily step aside and suspend any pending public appointments until the investigation is complete?
Thank you. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. I think she knows I'm staring at her, too. Carry on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm quite sure as the members opposite look across government and look at the agencies and boards and commissions and see people from many different backgrounds, including, Mr. Speaker, our recent appointment of the patient ombudsman. I'm sure that Christine Elliott we can all agree is a fine example of someone who has the skills, has the background, who can do that job in a very good way, Mr. Speaker. Those appointments have nothing to do with partisanship, Mr. Speaker. They have to do with merit. They have to do with ability. That's why the processes that we have put in place remove the partisanship from the decisions, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that a civil servant has laid out the process, that's the job of civil servants, is to make sure that we continuously remind ourselves about what the processes are and follow those processes.
Answer.
But our government put them in place, Mr. Speaker, and they are arm's length from the political process.